And welcome everyone, and thanks for joining this session. As Sam said, this has a little bit of a different format. I'm not going to share my screen too much with too many visual PowerPoint slides and those kind of things. But I would rather like to focus a bit on telling you the recent, and by recent, I mean like in the last like 1.5 years or so, developments and updates that has shaped CCM on the management and governance side. So as you're maybe familiar, like CCM is one of the core facilities and research platforms of the university, but we are also one of 17 facilities in Canada that have a national mandate and have operational fundings coming from the federal government. So we are a little bit different in that sense than other core facilities that you might see on campus in that our entire mission is not just to serve the McMaster community, but also the national community. So we do have a lot of students and researchers, people from industry, coming from all over the country, either coming in person or sending us samples and working with our team of staff that you guys hopefully all know. So basically this kind of setup requires a little bit more of management and considerations than you would probably expect from like a smaller kind of type of operation like that, since there is a lot of different more complications in how we make decisions at the CCM, how we finance things, how we manage things. What I want to do today is I want to actually go with you in a little bit more detail, not in extreme in-depth, but in a little bit more detail through our new strategic plan that has been published in spring this year and is actually on our CCM website to be found as well. So if you want to take a deeper look into all the text and imagery, then just go to our website and you can download it from there. So let me just share the screen. Let me see how that works. We have something going on here. Share. Okay. So I hope you can see my screen now. So this is basically the public-facing document that we have on our website. And I want to start here with like what CCM really is and what our mission is. And basically, CCM as a core facility offers a lot of electron and ion microscopy services. And we do have an excellent team of staff that have very diverse experiences in different scientific fields and with different instruments and different techniques, obviously. And that's something that we have done for more than a decade now. And we will obviously provide that in the future as well. But we also have pretty ambitious plans to expand that and change a bit in how we see our service offerings and access to the CCM and those kind of things. So overall, I think what we can say with CCM is we are a national hub for providing services in that area: electron microscopy, material science, characterization services, ion microscopy, and other correlated methods around that. But also we see each other as leaders in education and training for those kind of services. And so we're not just here to provide the instrumentation, but we're also here to teach anyone really, students, industry customers, anyone who has an interest in this technique can come and join the education effort in the form of, for example, these webinars that we have been putting out over the last 1.5 years. And we will continue that also into the future. And as we have done in the past as well, like as the pandemic situation will allow, we will come back to our like in-person courses and summer schools and workshops as well. So you can always look forward on that on our website. We will announce when we have something planned for that you can register and take part of that if you're interested in those topics. At the same time, we're also thinking in the future around more going into the actual kind of breakthrough materials research itself. So that includes also developing new methods, for example, around how do we develop new instrumentation that will guide us in developing new techniques to dive further into material questions, be it chemical mapping or crystallographic information, going in 3D, doing correlative workflows, going into in situ workflows such as gas and liquid and cryo ice, those kind of examples. So when we go actually here now to our vision here, we basically, this is kind of what I just explained in one sentence. And I think this is pretty essential that we say, like, through our EM research, the training and services, we catalyze tomorrow's materials innovation. So anyone who's an innovator in the materials field, be it applications or methods development, can use our services and our expertise to partner with us to bring forward their own projects and work with us in a way that everyone benefits here. We've here in the strategic plan also made specific goals, and we've grouped them into 4 different sub-goals. I mean, one of it is basically, we obviously want to be on the forefront of this materials characterization field, and we want to specifically, what we have to do here on this field, how to drive this forward. An important point is to create a network of expertise, right? And that is done through our management team and associated faculty, for example, at the university, but also elsewhere, and our embedded researchers. And those people can be our staff, but also postdocs that are working closely with our lab and others. And we will try to engage all of those stakeholders to really create a bigger community around that, stimulate the exchange of information through it, as I said, for example, webinars and workshops and those kind of events, but also things like communities of practice where people that have like-minded interests in certain topics, be it applications or be it techniques, can exchange knowledge, ask questions, get answers, troubleshoot, get ideas, these kind of things. So as well, what we are doing is, and CCM is currently actually right in the middle of this, we are constantly looking at evergreening our facilities. And what that means is, obviously, we have a lot of equipment, and equipment ages, and technology moves forward, and microscope vendors are constantly bringing out every year new techniques and new better instruments and better user interfaces and all that. So we're constantly looking out in what do we actually have currently in the facility, what needs replacement, what needs upgrades, how can we repurpose certain things, how much more floor space do we need. And if you've been in the facility in the last year or so, you've probably noticed there was a lot of dust and noise from the construction going on next to our traditional facilities. So we're actually expanding our floor space with 4 new labs with new instruments that will be coming up relatively soon. So any of those kind of details, look on our website and our newsletters for exciting new opportunities, how you can use new equipment in the facility that will come online very soon. What we're also seeing, equipment is one thing, but if you have no one to actually teach you and test out that equipment and optimize it and push it to the limits, that's not good. So in addition to our instruments, we also have obviously our team of staff, and we're going to continue to invest into that by specific recruitment of new people. And you've already seen a few new staff members being introduced to the team as well, and they're available for your services. But also we are going to continuously offer professional development around exactly like new techniques and anything that will be of use to the staff. So in the end, the idea is that we constantly have the best resources available to our users to really tackle the most pressing issues that are arising in those projects around materials characterization and applications. The other kind of big point here as well is what we call our national connectivity to researchers and innovators. What that means is in CCM, as the entire world is not just isolated in a bubble, although obviously in the pandemic it kind of sometimes felt a bit like that. But the truth is that, I mean, in today's world, no one operates on their own anymore. No one makes any breakthroughs by themselves, right? So what is really important is we are sitting embedded into a national and also an international community of EM labs and specialists and also applications. And basically what we're trying to really do here is in identifying all the linkages, strengthening them to, again, make the outcome of specific projects bigger than the individual abilities. So the idea could, for example, be like we can connect someone who does data processing and software development around 3D data processing with someone who has an application in that. And we offer also the platforms, the infrastructure to run certain things like that. And then together we can actually create better research, better outcomes, more exciting projects, and that will help everyone participating in those kind of projects. Also, we're going into the correlative areas and complementary areas. So electron microscopy and ion microscopy is a really valuable and versatile tool, but obviously there's other techniques as well. And just as one of the examples could be light microscopy, and as the renovation project that the university is doing in our vicinity is going on, there will be a new a new light microscopy facility coming online, which is called CALM. And there will be a lot of highly specialized light microscopy techniques being available. And it makes sense to combine those two together and use everything that's available to really go on different length scales into materials in different techniques. For example, all of a sudden, fluorescence techniques for soft materials are available, and that can be then correlated with electron and ion microscopy techniques. Those kind of things are very powerful if you combine those into projects, and if you're an academic researcher, let's say, and you want to really strengthen the impact of your paper, then I highly encourage anyone to look into that, of like, how can we combine different methods together to make a stronger case. That has always worked very well in the past, and in the future it will continue to be a really strong case to make compelling research stories that are very publishable in that, right? We also are looking here into not just academia in that kind of sense, but also for industry. We have a couple of industry people, I think, on the line here as well today. So we are also looking into specific projects for different enterprises that are for profit and pre-profit as well. And we have already booted up a couple of those projects, just to name like the IRAP project, for example, around that. So if you have any specific questions around commercial support with in-kind support, or with partnering with some funding agencies around that, then just let me know. The next point here that we're trying to make is we really want to maximize in the end the output that our users can have from CCM. So we have, in the end, we have the research going on, and we obviously want to maximize that. But we also want to really grow this network of researchers to make a larger community around the technique and the applications around that technique. So as one of the examples, we have now introduced a concept, and I will go a little bit in the future here into this, is we have traditionally always had one scientific director, and currently the scientific director is Nabil Basim. And we have now also what's called associate scientific directors. And those associate scientific directors are experts in their own fields that are associated with this same electron and ion microscopy, and they provide us with extra expertise, knowledge, and networking, so that we can tap into adjacent fields as well. So we have added that as a very useful tool to widen our knowledge around the techniques and the strategic setting around where should we go with the center for those kind of specific fields. Also, like, and this might be one of the most important points actually here in this strategic goal, is really the idea of transitioning from data-centric to knowledge-centric projects. What does that mean? Well, data-centric basically is we get a sample sent, and then we stick that in a microscope, and then some kind of an image data set comes out, whatever that might be. That could have some chemical information in it or something. And then, well, basically the first step would be to acquire that. And that's data centric. There's like, well, here's your file on a stick and have fun, right? But that doesn't really help most projects because they don't really want data, they want knowledge, right? And to connect data into knowledge is an extra step. And that requires extra expertise and extra infrastructure, for example, computing and storage and people expertise and consulting and all that. So we've already done that pretty well in the past. And I think into the future, we're specifically making now investments to make that even more viable and make this a very good tool that anyone is welcome to tap into as well. So don't just think that CCM provides you with the image files and then you have to do everything by yourself. You can continue the collaboration past that with specific staff at CCM that will be offering those kind of capabilities as well. One of the other things as well here is that the pandemic has shown that like the environment that we're operating in, where basically we have physical instrumentation and people have to go into this room and touch a button and then something comes out of the instrument in terms of images and that's great. But like in a pandemic, for example, that caused a lot of challenges because we're like, what if physical distance is encased? What if travel restrictions are encased? And we can't do that easily. But the question, even pre-pandemic, was always like, is that really necessary? Like, do we have to fly people across the country just to put a sample in a microscope? And the answer quite often is, well, not really. We can probably send them. And we've done that in the past where we offered those virtual Skype sessions at the time. That was before pandemic and no one really had all the expertise that we're now all experts in online video conferencing and collaboration. So I expect that in the future, this will be expanded quite a lot. And we're also looking into not just like having like a view only session and a direct communication to the staff actually operating the instrument, but even no one being in the room and someone can actually have some equipment operate remotely. That also comes with auto functions. Like, for example, we wouldn't have to automatically focus because the link might not be suitable for manually focusing things. So there's a bit of an AI component in here as well to make the instrumentation more clever. And so to have it all virtual. The virtual component is also part of the compute infrastructure that we're planning. So currently we had those workstations. You could walk into CCM and sit in front of one of them and work. In the future, we hope to develop something where anyone from anywhere can log into a big computer and you can use your laptops at home. And if you want, you can also come to CCM and have like nice workstations with big monitors and all that. And perform your work and your data processing in that way. So we're really expanding that and making ourselves more accessible geographically here as well. At the same time as well, like we really want to, this is here point 5, and Sam can talk a little bit more after I'm finished around that. We will really promote a culture of openness and transparency and dialogue for anyone and overcome systematic barriers. And what that really means is like, I mean, we have a lot of diverse community on campus already, and that is great, but we can always be more inclusive and look really for researchers and industrial people and anyone really who in the past had access to barriers to come to us for whatever the reasons might be, and that might be differing by individual group. So we are now really taking a in-depth approach and looking at all of this and seeing what can we do to increase access and more fair access to CCM for anyone, right? So more details around that will come out as well in the future as we go along with that. In terms of the education, as I said before, like this is going to be expanded from starting from what we had already been running webinars and those kind of things. We're calling this actually the CCM Academy. So at some point you can look out for this kind of branding. It's not really a completely new radical idea. It's basically packaging what we're already doing, expanding it and branding it as a very visible sign here. What you can expect in the future as well is a bit of a more systematic approach, and that might also include things like more formal credentials. So for example, when you go to a workshop or visit a summer school, then you actually get some kind of a certificate, for example, of completion out of that you can use to put on LinkedIn, for example, or on your resumes as well. So with that, let's stop that sharing here. That's basically like our strategic goals and our alignment. Now, that all sounds kind of very ambitious, and there's a lot of kind of things that need to be done to get all this machinery in motion. What we've done over the last 1.5, 2 years or so is we actually have boosted up our management and governance process quite a lot. What that means is CCM is actually not just like the kind of managed by like a few people, but there's quite a lot of different organizations that are taking an interest in that. And so I can share a screen here as well, just very briefly. Don't be shocked by this this org chart here because it looks complicated, but this is just to kind of visualize a little bit that we have a lot of different committees and a board running. What does that mean? So basically, CCM is obviously part of McMaster University. So that's kind of like up here, the Vice President Research at McMaster University is the one that we report to overall. We don't report directly to one of the faculties, but we work closely with the different faculties, specifically engineering science and health sciences. And then from the actual overview of CCM is done by the CCM Governing Board. And the CCM Governing Board itself is composed of members. They're mostly external members, but also members from McMaster University. And this group forms a board, and that board basically provides independent oversight over various processes that CCM is going through. For example, when we are proposing a new operating budget for the facility, or when we're discussing new equipment to be applied for and then brought online, or exactly those kind of ideas around what is our strategic plans and what should we do in the next 5 years. That board in the end provides a lot of this kind of feedback. And that board also has several kind of committees that take more deeper kind of analysis on the proposals that are being done. This is all a lot of details. You don't really need to worry too much about all of this, but basically just be rest assured that this is not just basically like the people that are now currently online, like namely like Nabil, myself, and Brian and Sam are doing these decision makings, but there's like a bigger kind of a picture to all of this. And so what we are doing as the management team is basically scientific director is Nabil Basim, executive director is myself, the facility manager is Brian Longley, and now we have, this is recent, we have now the manager in education and outreach, and that's Sam Stambula, since we are putting more emphasis on the education side. We officially brought her into the management team as well. And we basically form the management team that develop all those plans and discuss all those kind of things. And then we bring that forward to the board, and the board will provide us with guidance, feedback, and then actually approve those kind of actions. And then all of the staff that you see at the facility, there's different types of that. Actually, we have a lot of them technical staff. Those are the people that you will typically find on the microscopes. We have some administrative staff as well. We currently don't really have education outreach staff, but as this goes along, we will probably add to that as well. So those people basically like report to us. So it's actually, as you can see, like it's not that complicated of a structure, but it is a bit more than just what a lot of people might expect in a smaller core facility where you probably just have like 1 or 2 people making decisions. So with that, I think I can hand it over to Sam, and she can spend a couple of minutes discussing specifically what we've done around the EDI issue. And then I guess we can open it for questions as well.
Great, thanks, Andreas. So I will make this brief since the framework, it's not complete yet, but it will be something you will be seeing hopefully within the next year. So as Andreas mentioned, EDI and accessibility, it is a priority at CCM. We know we have a community of very diverse stakeholders, and we want to take this in consideration when we're envisioning our future. And we also want to decrease any barriers that may be existing that are preventing others from using our facility. So we have an intentional approach by trying to identify any EDI issues or accessibility issues that we might have, and we're trying to make that a priority and a goal to try to decrease anything within the CCM to make us more accessible. So as Andreas outlined in our strategic plan, within goal 3, we are trying to reimagine our business model and to use that to drive inclusiveness and innovation. So we realize that to be innovative, we need to be diverse and inclusive. And we plan to do this by promoting a culture of openness, transparency, and having more dialogue with our staff and users and engaging them to help build our frameworks. So in this case, EDI, that being equity, diversity, and inclusiveness, is applying to different groups within the CCM. So that's our governance team, so the board and the various committees, the management team, staff, partners that we have, our users, and the suppliers of our instruments. So how are we planning on doing this? So we are building a framework right now that will become a public document within the next year. This framework has been formed primarily based off of McMaster's EDI strategy, and you can find that online. It's called Towards Inclusive Excellence, a report on McMaster University's equity, diversity, and inclusion strategy. So by using that as our baseline to build this framework, but then we are also we're customizing it to our specific needs at the center and the specific groups that we work with. So within the framework, we're looking at decreasing barriers for equity seeking groups. So that includes women, Indigenous peoples, so First Nations, status and non-status, Métis and Inuit peoples, members of visible minorities and racialized groups, persons with disabilities, and persons who identify as LGBTQ+ communities. At the same time, though, we are also looking at other inclusiveness factors that may be affecting people accessing our centers. So that includes any economic barriers. So if there's any issues with funding, geography. So as Andreas mentioned, we're moving more online. So not being located within the GTA or Hamilton will no longer hopefully be an issue. Looking at diversity in research fields. So we want to welcome all different researchers of different fields, and we can see how that's really expanded in the past year with the addition of the FHS CCM at FHS into the center, and now with a lot of the correlative work that will be coming online. And lastly, also age. We recognize and value all age groups here at CCM, and we will not be discriminating against any ages within our users, our partners, or the hiring process for staff. So those are things we'll be considering within our framework. At the same time, we want to make this a living and public document, and we want the input from our users and our staff as well. So we will be getting this framework approved by our board. As soon as it's approved by the board, we'll be making it public. And within the next 1 to 2 years, I'll be forming a focus group where we'll be requesting staff and users to join, and we will be using their input to help improve the framework within the CCM so we can improve our EDI and accessibility. One thing we have noted within this framework, we do have a series of action plans for short-term, long-term, and medium-term goals that we do plan on meeting, and that's also why we're making it public, so we can hold ourselves accountable to trying to meet these goals that we're setting to increase our accessibility. So I'll bring you back on, Andreas. So if anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll begin moderating them now. So there's one question that has come in. Andreas, could you elaborate on the partnerships, please?
Certainly. So partnerships is like really one of those topics that we've done in the past in a way, but now I think we're really like rethinking that and making this bigger. I mean, in the past, primarily like how users access CCM was through user fees, right? I mean, that's basically a primary funding model. Users come, either want to just book instruments or do work and pay for that, and then they take their data and they leave. What we're trying to do now is with partnerships is we're identifying specific strategic partners, and they can be, for example, microscope vendors, or they could be companies that develop software for data processing, or those could be academic groups who are expertise in a certain technique or in a certain application. So just as an example, it could be something around looking at in situ gas samples, something like that. So if you're specifically interested in a partnership, then always feel free to welcome to send me or anyone of the management team an email. And the expectation basically in partnerships is the principle of mutual benefit. So if you, for example, say, hey, I have this really interesting, let's say, new technique, and this could be developed into something that could be commercially available to a certain group of people, but I don't currently have the funding to pay the general user fees, then we can look at that and basically say, like, well, is this something that we want to partner on? And CCM can provide some support for that. So it was really a bit of an individual question of like what exactly the partnership proposal is, like what every entity brings to the table. And then basically we can figure out a way to move forward and on things like that. So obviously, like in general, like we need usually funding somehow for those kind of projects. So then it becomes more kind of a question of like, who can actually apply for this funding? This can also be done together in partnership, and it might actually be opening new doors for specific types of funding that otherwise wouldn't be available, right? But any of these kind of details are really highly dependent on what exactly the partnership is. So anyone interested in knowing more of those details should just send me or Nabil or anyone else in the management team an email with specific details, and then we can take it from there in a one-on-one discussion.
Great. Next question. Could you please discuss technique development grants and maybe comment on the economic accessibility that we'll be working on?
Okay, so basically for methods development, we have already started partnering with certain external partners around that. So there's ongoing developments that you might see new techniques being offered at CCM in the near or midterm future for that. I can't really go into any specific details at that stage what that would be, but you would have to look out for announcements for that. Again, same ideas, like if you yourself have some kind of ideas around new techniques and want to see them developed in collaboration with us, then send me a message around that. And then, yeah, specifically for those, for the point of like the user fees and all that, I mean, there is basically some ideas that we have around, and that really depends kind of like on our future amount of funding that we're getting from other partners and all that. But there might be opportunities as well to really say we're going to have certain aspects of our strategic goals that we want to fund and want to promote. And so we're going to either not have user fees for specific things, or we have lower user fees, or we're going to have them in a co-application to some specific grant. Again, it's really highly dependent on what we really want to promote here in the strategic goals. So I think as per usual, like it is the best way is to contact, in this case, Brian, for example, as the facilities manager, if you want to have access to the facility. And then basically we can do a bit of pre-consultation around what is actually really required. Like, what resources do we need for things like that, and how do we fund that, right? And then we can have a bit of a discussion in general around how that works. I mean, a lot of those kind of like types of projects will still run on the user fee model, obviously, but there might be some interesting ones that, especially as we go into the kind of like breaking new techniques and breaking new grounds and things, that will offer more funding opportunities than more the what I would call kind of like the commodity market, where like we provide more like routine services on something that is well developed and is more kind of like assisting bringing a project forward, but not in itself a project, right?
Great. So a question has come in for me. Does CCM have experience / can we recommend a source on how images could be made accessible to vision impaired students? So that's a really interesting question. I would say currently we do not have experience in that, but we have been, Brian and I have been in consultation with an accessibility expert. They've actually come into the center and give us some recommendations to improve our accessibility beyond AODA standards. So one of the questions actually we did have was about the images themselves. And obviously we need to refrain from using red and green when coloring our images for anyone that has red-green color blindness. But an interesting point that did come out was that inherently the microscopes themselves are very inaccessible, whether that's through for someone that's visually impaired with the images, but also reaching and accessing different components of the microscope. So with that, it is something we acknowledge. Unfortunately, it's not something we can directly fix because we don't manufacture the instruments. However, within our user policy, we are offering our services to anyone that identifies with an accessibility issue or impairment. We make our services available to them and can help them with anything they may need on the microscopes or post-processing with accessibility terms. And this will be made public as well. Something interesting as well that we've talked to through McMaster Accessibility is possibly putting together, and this is one of our long-term goals that'll be coming out in our EDI framework, is actually putting together a community of practice in terms of targeting accessibility in the microscopy field. So this wouldn't be necessarily something local to CCM, but a communities of practice that would hopefully be more national or international, to see if there's a way that we could potentially make a little bit of waves or some changes within how the instruments are manufactured, just to make them slightly more accessible, whether that's through vision impairment, if there's something that we could do to make the images slightly more accessible, or even just the way the control panels are put together. So instead of having something that requires you to push a button or move a joystick, potentially moving that into a mouse or computer keyboard more easily accessible for those. And that should also come along when we move to our online formats. So while I would say we don't have direct experience at CCM, we are in consultation with those that do. And we'd like to try to make a change within this area through different communities and practices, and just different physical elements that we'll be implementing within the CCM that should be coming up within the next year. So another question has come in. Andreas, you mentioned the renovation and changes that have been happening. Could you discuss some of the hardware expansions that are going to be coming, and maybe what's already been installed as well?
I'm not sure if Nabil is on the line and available, because I think as the scientific director, I think he's probably more qualified to speak on that point. I don't know, Nabil, if you're there.
I'm gonna make Nabil a co-host. Nabil, if you're here, do you want to answer that question?
Sure. Just as Andreas sort of alluded, there's been a pretty heavy renovation happening. CCM is close to finishing an expansion of about 2,000 new square feet, which houses 4 new microscope labs. There are, as many people on the line know, there was significant funding announced from the CFI earlier this year, and we're in the process of adding new instrumentation. So What I can say at this point is we're adding a ultra high resolution aberration corrected STEM. It's called a neon microscope. So this will give you unprecedented electron energy loss spectroscopy resolution, as well as atomic resolution imaging in an ultra high vacuum environment. So that's that installation should be happening this fall. We just took delivery of a helium neon fib. It's called an Orion nanofab. That installation is happening right now. And then there's 2 bays for further expansion in the correlative workspace, mostly in a new focused ion beam, in situ SEM coming down the pike. I should also point out, for many of you who haven't been on campus for a long time or been at the CCM, last year we completed the installation of the Talos 200, which has in-column EDS, which can give you very fast chemical maps, and it's quite a nice microscope. And we've recently upgraded the monochromator on the Titan high base, so that's so you can get great energy resolution in the double corrected instrument that we have. One more set of investments is going to take a year or so, is the acquisition of some 3D micro CT for correlative workflows as well. So quite a few additions coming down the pike. I probably didn't cover everything, but stay tuned over the next year or two. We've got some really exciting instrumentation coming, and hopefully Andreas and Sam's overview shows you that we have the way of managing it so we can put it all to good use.